Hello, friends. Welcome back to Brotherly Love Gaming. Today it's just Alex here. Spence couldn't join because we'll be talking about Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind, which he hasn't been able to play since he is on Xbox, and Square seems to have forgotten about Xbox players this time since that DLC doesn't come out until the end of February. But anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about the potential story implications of the Remind DLC, as well as what we think is coming in the future of Kingdom Hearts. So we can dive right in, starting off with what we know for sure is coming in terms of the number of things we can expect. So, in advance of the Remind DLC coming out, Tetsuya Nomura gave an interview where he mentioned that in addition to the main Kingdom Hearts team, which worked on Remind and would be presumably working on a Kingdom Hearts 4, and in addition to the Union Cross team, which is still ongoing on mobile, there are two new teams working on projects, one of which will be coming surprisingly soon. Now, right after that happened, the Project Xehanort thing was announced, but it was tied up with an announcement from the Union Cross team. So, right now, it's a little unclear if this is the Union Cross team's work, if this is one of those two new projects he was talking about. We don't really know for sure. We can only really speculate. If that was something that was lost in translation, I don't really know, but it's unclear if this is part of those two projects or if it's something completely different. So, assuming it isn't one of those two projects, we have to wonder what those two projects could be, especially the one we would hear about surprisingly soon. I think right now it's possible to think that one of those two projects could be a Switch port of Kingdom Hearts 3, of the story so far set. And the reason we would be hearing about it surprisingly soon would be because of it being announced in an upcoming Nintendo Direct. We're still waiting on the first one of those for 2020. I think the timing lines up for us to be expecting this new Kingdom Hearts thing and also a Nintendo Direct. Beyond that, I think a Yozora game is definitely going to be coming before we get to Kingdom Hearts 4. I think it's pretty likely that one of these new teams is working on something like that, or it could just be something totally completely different that we don't even know about. I think maybe a movie retelling of the Union Cross story is on the table, kind of like what they did with the back cover movie that tells some of the background of what eventually became Union Cross. Just getting people the story of the foretellers and all of the stuff that happened in the sort of ancient past of the Kingdom Hearts universe in advance of the next saga of the story, I think would be pretty important, without requiring people to dedicate hours and hours and hours of time to this mobile game. So something in that neighborhood is what my guesses are, a Switch port, a Yozora game, some kind of Union Cross movie. We do know that a Project Xehanort thing is coming, but we don't know what it is yet. We know it's on mobile. The website for it mentions in-app purchases, so presumably it's a game of some kind. I at first thought that maybe it was going to be like a movie or some sort of other interactive experience that wasn't actually a game, but we'll find out more about that soon. I think sometime this week they're supposed to be revealing at least what its official name is, so maybe by the time you hear this, that information already exists. But that's supposed to be coming sometime in spring 2020, so at the very least, we don't have to wait too long to get the next piece of Kingdom Hearts whatever, We definitely know that's coming. So now I want to pivot over toward some stuff from the Remind DLC, I don't necessarily want to recap the whole story. I mean, there's the story that you play through, which is Sora rescuing Kairi, filling in some of the gaps between the ending of that game and the post-credits of that game. In between that, though, there are some, not even between, at the beginning of the DLC, there's some cutscenes that I think set up some interesting questions for us. One of them being that it becomes pretty clear, especially this combined with playing Kingdom Hearts 3, that Xigbar doesn't know where the black box is, which I think is pretty interesting, considering that he was the person who was supposed to be safeguarding it the whole time, and we know he's the person who ends up with it at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3. So there's an interesting question, to me anyway, about where it was hiding that whole time, and how it got back in his possession. Whether he found it on his own, whether Luxord ended up actually finding it somewhere and giving it to him, or even part of me wonders if maybe Maleficent found it and cut some kind of deal with him, because we do see Maleficent in that last scene watching them. So I think it's possible that she found it, wasn't able to open it like she probably wanted to, and Xigbar shows up to cut her a deal, being like, listen, give me the box back and you'll get some kind of reward in exchange. I think that that's an interesting question, since we don't know what's inside the box. Xigbar does, though, because of the Master of Masters in the back cover movie, we know, has told him what's in the box. So that's obviously going to be important, moving forward. I had hoped that they were going to open the box sometime in Kingdom Hearts 3. That didn't happen, so that's sort of on my wish list for the future. I have an idea about what might be in the box now, with some new stuff in mind from the Remind DLC, but we'll get to that in a minute. The other interesting scene is between the Master of Masters and young Xehanort in the Badlands. This scene seemingly takes place shortly before Xehanort takes his own Mark of Mastery exam, and it seems to be contemporary with young Xehanort's time, so he's not time traveling anywhere. We don't know for sure if the Master of Masters is truly there in that moment, if he's time traveled there and is going to return to his own time, since we don't really fully know the extent of his powers. But it's also possible that he's just there in that time, But the thing that I think is most interesting about that is that it's the first time we've seen the Master of Masters at any time besides the Age of Fairy Tales that's shown off in back cover. Since the whole point of that story is that the Master of Masters disappears, and presumably his return ties into the next saga and the Black Box. You would think that he wouldn't show up at all, but the fact that he shows up at least at one point in history to talk to young Xehanort makes you wonder, was he around for longer? Was he pulling strings that we don't know about yet? So I think that's going to be a key scene to keep in mind. I think it's interesting that he tells young Xehanort his name, and young Xehanort has some kind of reaction to it. I wonder if it's a name that he knows, but then you got to wonder, how could he possibly know this guy's name? I know fans have speculated on what his name is. And then it's interesting that he refers to himself as a Lost Master, because we have the scene at the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 3 where Xehanort brings up the Lost Masters, and Ericus doesn't know, or pretends to know that he doesn't know what he's talking about. We got to wonder, okay, does that chess game scene happen before or after this scene? When is the first usage of Lost Master occurring to young Xehanort? We don't know, as with most things these days in this series. a lot of breadcrumbs that are all connected together. I actually thought it was really hilarious in that interview that I mentioned that Nomura mentions how he thinks a lot of fans are like way overthinking things. I'm probably doing that right now, but we'll wrap up with one last thing that I think ties a lot of stuff together. So this goes all the way to the end of the Remind DLC, to the secret boss and then the secret ending where Sora meets Yozora, and you find out that he's a real person in this universe. He's not just a video game character like he was first introduced in the Toy Story level in Kingdom Hearts 3. And you know that Yozora is on some kind of mission to save Sora. He accuses Sora of just using Sora's name. A lot of weird, interesting stuff happens in that scene. I think that's a scene that we'll probably end up referring back to in the future and like unpacking things from. But what I kind of want to hone in on is the fact that when Sora runs into Yozora, a couple things happen. So for one, he says that girl told me about you, which you wonder, okay, what girl? I think the only possible girl he could be talking about is the nameless star he meets in the final world, who says that she's waiting for somebody, and she tells Sora their name, and Sora seems to recognize the name. I know a lot of people thought that the nameless star was Marluxia's sister, but the fact that Sora seems to recognize that person's name and then doesn't say anything to Marluxia, when they meet up later, sort of kills that theory, I think, for me in a big way. I think it makes sense for those two things to be connected, and for the nameless star to be somebody waiting for Yozora, whether it's that girl that's in that trailer that's inside of the Toy Story level. I guess that remains to be seen. That's probably the most likely thing, but we don't know that character's name yet. So the Nameless Star also says that Yozora has been changed beyond recognition, that his heart's been replaced with another. And then when Sora meets Yozora says that the form he's in then, which is the one that we recognize him from the Toy Story game, isn't what he normally looks like. Which I think also supports the idea that the Nameless Star is talking about the same person. Going a little bit of a step further, he is then confused as to how Sora could know who he is, because that's not what he normally looks like, which on the one hand makes you wonder if he for some reason expects Sora to know what he's supposed to look like. Why do you recognize me when I'm like this? This isn't what I normally look like to you. The fact that he thinks Sora is using Sora's name also makes you wonder if Yozora has met someone named Sora before and is sort of doing the same thing. It's kind of a bucket full of potential hints and breadcrumbs for the future, So what does this all mean, and what do I think could be the next stage going forward? Well, I really do think that there's going to be a Yozora game. I think that the fact that this DLC ends with a shot-for-shot recreation of a Final Fantasy Versus 13 trailer suggests that Nomura really wants to make something in that space again. And I also think that I don't want to say how likely, but one of the theories that I have right now is that maybe the Master of Masters and Yozora are the same person. Whether they go by that name or they have a different name that we don't even know yet, I guess we'll see. But I think that that's a possibility. And I also think that, okay, what's in the box? I think maybe it could be, it's the Nameless Star's body or something like that, her physical form that she could return to, a vessel for her, and maybe the reason why the Master of Masters has had to do this whole plan across time and have all these things happen is because he needs, her vessel to stick in this box and travel across time so that he could be in the present with Sora, because, Sora somehow was able to go to the final world and maintain his shape, and that's what's going to be able to get him to return, the Nameless Star to her physical form, That's all sort of weird, out there metaphysical stuff, but I guess I just sort of came to that after wondering, like, what could possibly justify this sort of weird, confusing plan that the Master of Masters seems to have had, where he has to have, two Keyblade Wars happen, and he has to have his apprentice carry this box across time, I know a lot of people seem to think that the Book of Prophecies is in the box. Maybe it is. I think that's a little too basic for something this big, for them to just reveal that it's an item that we already know has existed in this world. I think it's going to be something really outlandish, and I think it's probably somebody's body or a vessel of some kind. Maybe it's not the Nameless Stars. Maybe it's a form for the Master of Masters himself. But that's just kind of where I'm at right now. I don't think that we'll get an answer to that anytime soon, because if we do get a Yozora game, and if it is like a Final Fantasy Versus 13 thing, that's probably not going to lead to the answers that we want, unfortunately. So we'll see where that goes. But I do think that the Yozora character is going to be really important moving forward, and I definitely think that we'll get something from him. It's just a question of when, because Nomura mentioned that the main Kingdom Hearts team is going to be a while before they make another thing again. You would think that he would want to be in charge of a Yozora game, but he's going to be finishing up Final Fantasy VII Remake for this year, and then there's going to be another part at least, and probably a third part, hopefully not a fourth part, and who knows then when he'll be able to get back to Kingdom Hearts. I think that's the real reason why we're going to end up seeing some extra spin-off stuff, is just because Nomura is going to be too busy to get back into the main narrative again, which is kind of, if you think about it, what happened in the first place. The Final Fantasy Versus 13 pulled him off of Kingdom Hearts in the first place, and then that ended up not happening, at least the way he wanted it to. And then he started doing Kingdom Hearts 3 and Final Fantasy 7 Remake at the same time, So we're kind of back at the same stage where it's like, okay, he finished a game and seemingly wants to work on something different before he comes back to Kingdom Hearts, but that could really pull him away for a long time. So we don't know. We're free to speculate. I like speculating. I really sort of went Ultra Galaxy Brain in the last couple weeks around this game, before and after Remind came out, just because I really like thinking about the Kingdom Hearts universe. even if it does seem like a confusing mess sometimes. But I really would like to hear some other theories about what could be going on here, what you think of the 2 potential games that we're getting in the future, what you think of my theory about Yozora's importance to the series and if we're going to be getting a game with him, what you think might be in the box, what you think some of these cutscenes that I mentioned, or even others that I didn't mention, what you think that they might imply about the future of the series. But I think that should wrap this one up now. I went for much longer than I had originally planned, but if you like this one, you know what to do. Like this video, definitely drop me some comments down there and subscribe to the channel to see more like this in the future. Until then, thanks for hanging out. Bye.